Park Central people, I miss you. As we try to find new and creative ways to be encouraged and nurtured and strengthened by God's Word, we thought we'd try some reflections today on Psalm 23. Psalm 23 is the psalm that we're given for this week, and it seems like such a gift to have it right now. Let's listen for God's Word. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in right paths for his name's sake. I remember a few years ago, Andrew and I were traveling through what felt like a wilderness place in New Zealand. There were brown hills surrounding our car, and it felt like nobody was around for miles, until we came around this curve and found ourselves in the middle of a huge herd of sheep. We had been worried that day because we were out in the middle of nowhere. Would we have enough gas? Would we find somewhere to eat? What about the place we had booked to stay that night? Would it be okay? Would we get lost? Would Andrew remember to drive on the left-hand side of the road? We worried about all these things, but as I looked at the sheep around us, I realized that they weren't worrying. They just moved along, sometimes running ahead, sometimes nibbling on the grass, sometimes urging each other back along the edges. But mostly they just seemed totally unconcerned about the big picture of where they were going. They were kept, they were held, they were surrounded along their way by their faithful shepherd in the pickup truck with the dogs in the back. Their faithful shepherd was guiding them along, and they didn't need to worry about the big picture. When I take a deep breath these days, I remembered that our shepherd is still here, still providing for us, still guiding us. Our shepherd is still showing us the right path and is able to restore our souls even on the toughest days. The psalmist goes on to say, even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil. For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. We often read this psalm together at a funeral service. This central part of the psalm draws us together in our grief and is a powerful reminder of God's presence and God's provision for us. Many of us know it this way. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. When we grasp the immensity of God's promises, even for a moment, we know that we are held in God's hands. We know that God is steadfast. It doesn't mean that the valley of the shadow of death will not be hard. It does mean that we live with the memory of how God has been faithful in the past. And we can live in the present with hope because we have the deep trust that God will never leave us. There is no valley we can walk through where God is not present. And God can use even this present time for good. As we keep resting in God's strong and faithful presence, as we keep loving our neighbors, as we face death with the same faith that has brought us this far. At the end of the psalmist says, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Recently, Andrew and I have ended each day with prayers of gratitude. We just name out loud what has made gratitude rise up in our hearts that day. It's become our way of recognizing, noticing every day that our cups overflow every day. That God's good gifts are spread out before us like a feast every day. That goodness and mercy follow us, even when we can't travel very far. So I invite you to try a practice of gratitude yourself this week. Even if you can only think of one thing or one person that makes you grateful, lift that one thing up with open hands. Give thanks to God and rest in God's peace. And if you would like to share your gratitude, I think it will help us stay connected to each other. So send me a brief message at education@parkcentralchurch.org or text me. Tell me something that you are grateful for. How are you experiencing God's abundance? How are you experiencing God's steadfast love or God's goodness and mercy in these days? As I get your responses, I will share them and help us all stay connected to each other and hear each other's voices. In the meantime, continue to pray for those close to you. Pray for our church community. Pray for our community here in Syracuse, and particularly pray for those who are most vulnerable among us. Breathe deeply and find a way that you can be a bearer of God's love, goodness, and mercy in this week. We'll talk again soon. May God be with you.